as the former Minister of Finance, who was there in that particular hot seat when a lot of these legislations were coming down the pipe, were being formulated, and it was being formulated as part of a greater whole in order to help deal with corruption, crime, drugs, etc. So I don't know, well, we could more or less pick up where you left off and explain all of that to the public.
So the reason why I feel that I can speak on the issue is because I was in the driver's seat at the time. It's noteworthy to me, as I said, that they jumped from 2002 to 2021 when it came to the Revenue Authority. But I just want to say this one thing before I move on and deal with the Revenue Authority. I do recall, and I'm in a position to do that the Prime Minister at the time, God rest his soul, said to me, when after maybe I was there a year or so, he said to me that, you know, this boots on the ground, not to say that he was abandoning it, I would not say that, but he said that, you know, what we have to do is prevent it from coming onshore in the first place. Let's stop it from coming in. And he used the term a Chinese wall. So you disrupt it. So it was not just me working from the legislative end or from the financial legislation that was required. Key pieces that would have acted as a disincentive. But you also had Ministry of National Security, the acquisition of OPVs, acquisition of helicopters, the radar system that could go right up to St. Kitts, if I recall him saying, and also the boats being able to stay out at sea for 2 weeks at a time and having the capacity to outrun the boats that were able to speed through and you couldn't catch them in time. So I was not national security, but what I'm trying to say by saying that, it was not silos. We were not operating in silos. We were operating in a very, very sort of integrated method, with each ministry having some overlap, yes, but each ministry playing its role in dealing with what we considered a disruption of the trade without the trade coming onshore. So I just think people need to understand that that was what was going on. And if people think that was not what's going on, that was what was going on. And I think I can speak with authority on that. SORT was also part of it. And just to make it clear too, because I want people to see the interrelationship. It wasn't as though the FIU was operating in a little corner by itself and SORT was operating in a little corner by itself, Ministry of Finance, Central Bank, and the banks. No, it was never that. They were all, we use a special model with the banks for reporting to the central bank. The central bank would then report to the FIU. The FIU, which would then have the intelligence, gathering of intelligence, would then go to SORT, which is a special unit which dealt with the corruption. And then the last piece which we were about to implement was the DPP, to have a special unit within the DPP that would be ring-fenced, probably in a separate building, whose responsibility would be to deal with the laws and understand the laws and have the training in money laundering and drug.
I just wanted to, before you get into the Revenue Authority, I almost feel the regret of what could have been.
I do all the time.
And just what would our crime situation and corruption situation have been if these things were put in place? And then, of course, now the semi-conspiracy theorist in me has to ask the question, because what we have now is simple majority legislation for all of these things. A version of simple majority for all. This would have been 3/5 majority. It would have been a bit stronger, right? We don't have the Coast Guard assets and radar that was planned to have. So,
but the scanners not even working.
Right. Is it that is part of Mr. Manning's downfall the fact that there were people that didn't want to see these things in place?
Well, I mean, everybody knows.
Asking the question,
okay, yes, and I have to be honest in this way, that I guess everybody knows that I am very loyal to Mr. Manning. But it's not Mr. Manning, the person. I didn't have that type of relationship. My relationship was that of a minister who did not want to let down the Prime Minister. And then began to understand his vision and understand what he was doing and understand how all those pieces, like a jigsaw puzzle, interconnected. You wanted
No,
to say?
well, just before another time, the Revenue Authority
Right.
itself.
So, okay, with the Revenue Authority, we needed a three-fifths majority. And although we focused on collection of taxes as being the basic focus, I don't know if people recognize, and if you look at it, the Ministry of Finance had two components. It had the Board of Inland Revenue, and it had Customs and Excise. Customs and Excise fell under the Ministry of Finance. There were some people who wanted to cut it off and put it in another ministry for whatever reasons they may have been, but they didn't want it. But what really made me decide to say something which I have not said for countless years is because it is very surprising to me that all of the components of the Revenue Authority, which is supposed to be semi-autonomous and not be subject to the Public Service Commission, because you know that a lot of people will, all over the world, stay in public service jobs, even though they're not the best paying, because it's very hard to fire them because of how the service commissions operate. So the issue that we had, and the corruption and the corrupt practices and all of that Gordon Dean they were speaking about, was that they knew who were the corrupt parties. Some custom officers were killed. I don't know if you remember. No, I don't know if it happened around the scene, but there were some that had been killed. So we understood that it was really, and I don't want to go into too much detail to the extent to which we were dealing with it, but I can assure you we were dealing with it. But we couldn't come out to the public and say that was the main thing, because you could imagine those who are powerful in this country, very powerful in this country, would come down and use their resources through the media to, to make a mockery of what we were doing. So we had to be very careful how we projected it. But it really was, to a large extent, to deal with the drugs, trafficking, and the money laundering. And the Customs and Excise played a major part. So when I read now, I looked for the legislation which we had passed. I can't find it. Maybe it's there somewhere, but even on the Ministry of Finance website, they go from 2002 to 2021. Key thing that you notice is that they have the Director General, they have the Deputy Director General, and then they have the Deputy Director General Enforcement. Enforcement. He or she who is responsible for enforcement. And this is what it is, because you remember Customs is will be part of the Revenue Authority, as it is now part of the Ministry of Finance, Board of Inland Revenue.
Right.
The Border Control, Customs Division, regulation of, this is what it said his responsibilities would be. Regulation of exports and imports of goods from or into Trinidad and Tobago, patrolling, surveillance, and protecting borders of Trinidad and Tobago, regulation of conveyance entering into or departing from Trinidad and Tobago, enforcement in relation to custom laws. Now that enforcement division remains in the public service. What does that mean? The whole idea of the Revenue Authority was the fact that you couldn't fire, you couldn't hire, you couldn't discipline, you couldn't move. You had very little leeway because of the public service rules. And so the whole thinking behind the Revenue Authority was to take it out of that sort of restrictive environment and allow us to hire people that, in particular, in certain divisions, and the division was enforcement.
Right.
The division was enforcement. So the only division in the new Revenue Authority that does not fall under the purview of the board, of the Revenue Authority board, over which, of course, the Minister of Finance, some will say he has too much oversight, there are a lot of revenue authorities all over the world, but the only one that is still subject to the Public Service Commission, still subject to the discipline, hiring thing, is the Public Service Commission. It's in the law.
No, is it the enforcement?
Enforcement.
Right.
And they actually say in the law that all these provisions that we have apply except to the Deputy Director Enforcement. And then they tell you the Deputy Director Enforcement will be under the Public Service Commission, and all the public, and including all public officers hired by the Public Service Commission. The very thing that we wanted the Revenue Authority to do. If people don't understand that, I'm telling you that is what it was. Yes, it was, and when we talk about collection of taxes, I will give the minister a lot of kudos for this. If it is that he says, and he rightfully says, that a lot of people evade or avoid, I don't know, one is illegal, one is legal, payment of taxes, he took initiatives in 2 years in a row where he had hired people on short-term contracts to go after the persons who had not been paying their taxes. And it was more successful than he had ever dreamt of. I think he was able to reach about 5 billion. So if it is that, if it's not broke, why fix it? At this point in time, you can still, because a lot of the reading on revenue authorities, not every revenue authority is successful. But you see, our revenue authority, its focus wasn't, it was on revenue collection. I'm not saying it wasn't. I'm not saying it wasn't. But we had the problem that many other countries do not have, or do not have as a major issue, the issue of drug and money laundering. The EU still has us blacklisted, and it was the problem in 2008, 2009. So the driving force behind the Revenue Authority, as I understood it, and as I, as being the person who was in charge of that initiative, I understood it, and there are things that I won't say, that understood that we were going after the drugs and after the money laundering.
Because you would be using financial intelligence, you'll be tracking the money, you'll be controlling customs, so
everything connected.
And everything will be right. The special police unit, which has now been, I guess you could say, it's funny because there is a version of all these things, but the way how they were implemented by other parties, they're disconnected, and they seem to be a shell of themselves, right? Or in the case of SORT, they seem to be...
But SORT had to be shut, SORT had to be shut down.
Right, they seem to be
bastardized
versions of what the original intention was.
Well, that sort of Gary Griffith's doing was closed down by the US because they said there were too many extrajudicial killings. It was, they had to come out and admit it.
I mean, we haven't heard the final verdict.
No, they came out in the papers.
No, I know they came out in the papers, but I don't see. We should have, I believe it's 2 cases of which we
somebody falling off a chair.
Two men fell off a chair.
Andrea Barrett, God rest her soul, because it was the only child of the gentleman who lost his only daughter. So I'm not making light of that. So please, we respect that and we honor that. But the Americans had enough of it.
Well, so this Vision of Revenue Authority, outside of that change, right, that they are going to put the enforcement division under the public service.
That's a big thing.
I know it's a big thing. Are there any other changes that we should be aware of?
Well, the other one that, just curiously, may not, I'm only mentioning it because it's, it's more than ironic to me. And that was, we were very gung-ho, and a lot of pressure was applied to get it going and use the 3/5 majority. So the Canadians who had been brought in before me and had given advice, so they were very well, they knew the system, and they knew all the different ways that you can close down Ministry of Finance, Board of Inland Revenue and Customs, and there are different models that you could apply. And we have what we call a policy formulation committee, which was every Wednesday headed by the Prime Minister and attended by certain ministers. The bottom line was this. They had made a presentation to me and my department and had recommended that the best model is the model that is in the Section 18, which is you get VSEP if you don't want to go to another department.
Right.
We could appoint you if you want to come into the Revenue Authority. We appoint you because they want to get rid of the corruption. That's the truth, right? The other alternative, if we don't choose you in the interviewing process, then you go to another ministry which you would not lose your salary or your stay as much as possible, as it is possible.
Right.
Those were put on the table, and it was utilized in many countries. And that was the recommendation that was made to us. When a recommendation came and they came to the party, I shan't call the name of the ministers, but I will just tell you, they said, no, 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 no. We're not doing that. We're not doing that. Shut down everything. Oh, my Lord. I said, if we shut down everything, do you know what you're causing? Why are we going to do that? I mean, don't you think it's hard enough doing what we're doing rather than now going and shut down custom and shut down in a revenue? No, no, no. I won't say more because then I'll be giving out who may have said, who are the persons who would have said that. I was so adamant, myself and others were so adamant, but I in particular, that the Prime Minister said, okay, let the consultants stay one more day, and we're going to have a special meeting of the cabinet on Friday to decide what model we're going to use. And I would just say to you that it was by a show of hands, and everybody, let them all now say, or they can't say anything, because guess what? After those who sat down there and said, no, 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 you see the model they use in Section 18 for which they could not get the injunction? That's the model that we wanted, and that's the model they shut down. Yes, so some of whom are in this current cabinet. I just wanted to say that.
Current cabinet. So,
yes.
Folks, that injunction is actually, there's further implications than just individuals concerned about their job security. If we really want to deal with corruption, that also means that some people might have to be called out about what they're not doing right or what they're doing wrong. And it's going to happen.
By the way, we have to go. But if you went into enforcement, we chose you. You had to do lie detector, drug testing. You were like if you were in SOT.
Exactly. That's how serious crime was being taken back in 2010.
In enforcement,
Look
especially.
Look at what we have now.